Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with justice for all. Thank you. First item, I'll take attendance. I'm here, Bob Clark is here. Rich is absent. I'm here. Oh, there you are.
Sorry, Rich. There.
Ray
Absent.
is absent. Gary's on Zoom.
Hello.
Oh, Ray is absent. And Eileen is here. I will appoint Eileen as a voting member in place of Ray for tonight's meeting. She was here last month, so let's see everything on there. Next item, review and approval of our May 6th regular meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to read them? And are there any additional corrections or revisions? Very well, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes at the May 6th meeting as written. So moved. Second, Richard Fox. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions. New business, item A. Commission discussion on decision regarding a referral to the zoning commission. For special permit application for proposed single story 80,000 square feet manufacturing buildings on the property located in 897 Haven Road. Applicants for Gazy Zoning and Engineering.
I received an email today that said we will no longer be pursuing land use approval for the New Haven Road site as an alternate site has been selected. Thank you for your help in attempting to expedite the approval.
New business item B. Commission discussion with the decision regarding a withdrawal from the zoning commission for a special permit application for a proposed single story 29,200 square foot retail building and required excavations of property located at 912 and Haven Road. Applicant 589 Investments LLC.
Does he have any want to run it? Take out our workshop. All right, good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
My name is Chris Pulaski. I'm a licensed professional engineer with Civil One. Here to talk about 912 New Haven Road on behalf of our client. I'm also here with my colleague Sean Quinn from Civil One. We're here before you on a referral from the zoning commission. We are seeking a special permit for a 29,200 square foot building. The project is expected to take 4 or 5 years to complete. There will be 191 parking spaces, it's a 30-foot front driveway. We've had a traffic study completed. Happy to get into more of the details, but overarching, high level, 29,200 square feet retail building. You're here to check conformance with P O C D. The P O C D has identified this area as a key redevelopment opportunity for infill and new development along New Haven Road. And that's right from your 2023 P O C D. We believe our proposal as it currently exists fits in conformance with P O C D. We also have received a letter from the town planner, thank you, which reinforces our belief that the project is in conformance with the P O C D. I will just orientate you all quickly, Sean, with you in mind, for the next slide. So our site is located here in the green. This is New Haven Road, Route 63. This is Cross Street, just to kind of orientate everybody. Site is partially cleared. It is a wooded lot. There's no previous development on it. It is steep mountain slope, and we're going to bring down to the grade along the road, and then construct the 29,200 square foot retail building. So if you click on the slide, one more, should be a rendering here. Yeah, it's on the front page. So this is what the completed building will look like following in the construction. So with that, happy to answer any questions you may have. I can really dive into the nitty-gritty of the project, but again, it's our belief that it conforms to the P O C D. There's no residential, direct abutting residential neighbors. They're all business or professional or PDD zones to the property. So it should fit in nicely right along the New Haven Road corridor. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the commission? Okay, would you please talk a little bit about the excavation?
Yeah, so we want to ahead with the phasing plans here. Keep going. Right there, thank you. So again, the site is mountainous terrain, so along the road here. It grade climbs to the rear of the site. It's approximately 100 to 120 foot elevation difference. So in order to construct the facility, we're going to be bringing it down to grade. So the first step in the process is constructing this road as you see here. So we're going to be obtaining an encroachment permit from the Connecticut DOT. Then we will be constructing this access drive up and creating a pad here. There's certain regulations that the borough has as to where the crushing and processing equipment can be placed. That is shown in this box here. So we will be processing the rock in the center of the site and creating what we call pad 1. So we'll be bringing down 20 to 30 feet in the center of the site to kind of set us up for the base. And then we will proceed with earthwork operations from there. At this point, I would like to say that we'll have our silt fence in, temporary sediment traps. All of the soil erosion sediment control items have been designed in 2002, in accordance with 2002 soil erosion sediment control manual. So all of that will be installed here. And again, it's already been partially cleared. There's some brush on the site and then some existing wooded areas. So at this point, we would proceed with earthwork operations. So I'll give you a moment for the next page. Thank you. So from there, we're going to branch out from the center of the site. So we previously were here. The first phase of the excavation process, and then we're going to start in the center and kind of work our way out. And you'll see the blue is a proposed contour, so the limit of the rock face in the future. We have had a geotechnical engineer prepare a geotechnical engineering report for this project. We are keeping a 50-foot natural wooded buffer. So if you look on the plans right here, there is a fence line. It's delineated with an X mark. Everything outside from the sides and the rear is to remain in a natural wooded condition. And then that fence will be constructed at the top of the rock face to prevent, it's like a fall protection measure in the future. And then as the rock processing occurs, the site will be brought down and it'll be generally level as you pull in from the road. And again, we are going to need 4 to 5 years to remove the rock There's 485,000 cubic yards to be excavated out of here. It's currently a very mountainous and hilly terrain. So I hope that answers your question. Sorry for the whole thing.
The fence around the steep retaining rock wall
Correct.
is how tall, how is it protecting? I think it's when they run through the road, all the fence.
So I believe the fence. It's either a 4 or 6 foot chain link fence. So it'll be the mesh, so the kids won't be able to come through. And again, there is that existing 50-foot wooded buffer top to remain, so. It's 5 feet, steep, 5 feet chain link fence.
And the remaining rock wall is granite, sandstone.
I'm not sure on the exact type of rock, but it'll be a finished base rock face at the end of it, so.
More concerned with something that erodes over time and it's exposed.
Right, so
Sandstone for that.
Right, so our geotechnical engineer, I believe, is on the call. If you please admit him to the meeting, he'd be happy to talk about it. Ray, can you hear us?
I think he just came in. So it might take him a second.
Yeah, just give him 1 second. I apologize. But he'd be happy to talk more about the rock that's out there and what our.
But if not, he should be here.
So it won't be retaining wall, it'll be natural.
That's correct. Exposed rock face. And at the bottom of the site plan, we do have a fall protection zone from that rock face. So our curb and our parking is not destructed. So double safety measure, if you will, you have a chain link, the 50-foot buffer on top of the hill, we call it. And then you have a buffer zone on the bottom. So he did. Ray, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry for the delay, everyone.
Thank you for joining us, Ray. It's Chris Palazzo with Civil One. Would you mind talking about the rock face on the site? There was a question regarding the current makeup of it, if you will, and what it's supposed to look like in finished condition.
Oh, absolutely. Let me see if I turn my camera on so you could see my ugly mug. Yeah, so again, this is Ray Gennaro, Down to Earth Consulting, principal geotechnical engineer for the firm. So at this site, certainly have quite a bit of rock excavation that would be required. So what we put together is basically a letter which should have been submitted for record, which basically demonstrates how this rock would be excavated in accordance with the standard of care, ensuring the protection of people and property surrounding us. And so, you know, I could get into the details of that. You know, certainly what we would do is offer conditions assessments for the neighboring parcels, incorporate that with some vibration monitoring as well. And again, with the objective of protecting life and property. So the question was what the final cut, the rock excavation would look like. So this formation, it's actually a part of the Waterbury Gneiss Formation. And essentially it's going to look very similar when all is said and done to the rock cut they just did along I-84 in Waterbury, you know, when they utilized the pre-split methods and whatnot. So as Chris had mentioned, you know, the design concepts are still being formulated at this time. So some engineering will be required in order to confirm the widths of the rock catchment area that Chris had referred to, and then also the geometry of the slope as well. But in terms of, I believe the question was aesthetics, what it's going to look like, it's going to look essentially similar to that cut, if anyone's familiar with that off I-84 in Waterbury. in the Reedville Drive area.
Thank you, Ray.
Yeah, no worries.
I don't know if that answers your question or if you have any further questions for Ray.
What is the rock? What is it?
It's a gneiss. It's a metamorphic rock, and again, it's part of the Waterbury Formation. So it's actually a meta gneiss for us geology nerds in the room. It's a very competent, very massive rock formation. And meta gneiss refers to the fact that it not only underwent one form of metamorphosis, but also two forms. And again, that's as a result, you're left with a very massive bedrock formation. And the bedrock formation type is gneiss, GNEISS. And that is discussed in that aforementioned letter report.
Yes, on the stormwater management report, you're going to be removing the surface soil. You have this extremely hard and durable rock, and the stormwater report seems to indicate that the proposed flows afterwards will be less. How is it possible?
So as part of our requirements, when we go through running engineering progress, we have to meet our engineering project, we have to meet or reduce our peak flows. So to achieve that on this project, we're proposing a large stormwater renovation area or basin in front of the site. So that's how we are reducing or meeting the peak flows for the project from existing to proposed conditions.
And how early on in the project is that going to be implemented?
So, shall we mark on that one slide, please? So the basin is located in this front area here. So in phase one, we'll start with two sediment traps, temporary sediment traps that'll collect the runoff from the disturbed area. And as that area grows wider, these traps will expand and you'll have the stormwater retention basin. So in the beginning, it'll be smaller, but as the project expands its footprint, it'll get to that final size. And we did receive comments from the town engineer, and we're going to be updating these phasing plans to provide more detail of exactly when certain things are going to be installed and things of that nature. Like for example, one of the requests was to install the fall protection fence at the beginning of the project, which we're happy to do. And we will be incorporating as part of our revised plans. So the short and sweet is it'll start construction of temporary sediment traps, which will be enlarged to the full-size stormwater basin before the completion of the project. So from day one, there will be protection measures in place to collect, control the sediment and the runoff from the site. Thank you.
This might be a question for Jimmy Stewart, but the traffic plan said there really doesn't need to be any traffic light at this point in time.
Correct.
Since this is gonna take, 3 or 4 years to implement, do we look at it again at that point in time, or is it?
Well, they'll probably need another DOT permit when they start to build the building, which occasionally will be reviewed by them at that point. Actually, again.
Because if they could build around it, who knows what's gonna happen in 4 years. Okay.
That's correct. So in the beginning, and thank you, there will be an encroachment permit from the DOT that's to get access onto the property from the state road. That doesn't look at necessarily your traffic volumes or anything like that. We have to go through an OSTA process, which when we have the final mix of tenants for the building, we formally submit those are gonna be. And depending on what they are, they'll do a reevaluation of the site. And that's when we determine if we have any traffic signal or not. At this time, no, we are not proposing a traffic signal. Thank you for your question.
Is there a destination for the removed materials
Or
or to be determined?
it's to be determined.
So you could have exiting traffic issues with the traffic.
We have proper sightline distances, and I believe our traffic engineer has looked at items of that nature, but I'm happy to follow up with them. Following this.
Any other questions?
I have a quick question, but two. One, there was gonna be no on-site sales, correct?
That is correct.
Everything's gonna be removed off, you're not gonna sell anything here.
That's correct.
Off the rock. And the second, so the road as it is now will eventually be where the detention basin is, correct?
It's close to it, correct?
Right.
So the detention basin is generally in this portion where you see like the TS and the TST. This is the slope, and you have a temporary sediment trap here, but it's gonna expand to capture the.
When do you anticipate going to the proposed entrance then?
The proposed entrance will probably be a final, near the final stage. Because we need, this is the current proposed grade, we have to climb kind of sideways to
Right.
get up to where
To
we
get it,
are.
yeah.
So as we blast down, you're gonna then will, at the end of that, we would punch in the final road essentially. So as the grade comes down, you'll start to see that entrance more and more, but not in the beginning because it's just too steep.
Yeah, I understand this. I was just, as you said, you were gonna be using that road, it's going right through the detention area.
Correct.
So
So
as you're enlarging the detention area, you're
the
going.
road will be adjusted.
Okay, they'll adjust the road.
That's correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from Zoom?
No.
No, no questions from Zoom. Any more questions in the room? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
It's got to stop the shit.
Okay, hearing no more questions. Entertain a motion to define the commission and a positive referral to the zoning commission regarding a special permit application. The proposed single story, 29,200 square foot retail building, required excavation for property located in 9 Cell, the Haven Road. Applicant 589 Investments LLC.
Also move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, old business. Item A, a commission discussion on a decision regarding a referral from the zoning commission to amend the zoning regulations to add both residential treatment facilities for the boats as an allowed use in the B1 zone with special add a definition for residential treatment facilities and add a parking standard for residential treatment facilities. Applicant Heritage Downtown LLC.
In a moment, thank you.
Bob, is it possible for you to bring your microphone a little closer to your phone? That one. So hopefully that will pick up a little bit more of your voice.
Okay, sorry.
Because I know this used to be closer. But now with it there, it's, I don't know if your voice is carrying enough for everything on Zoom.
You guys all see this one? Can you guys see that?
They can't see it, Laura, the commission.
Better?
A little better, I can make it out. Yeah. So if it helps, the only thing we're gonna be showing is what I handed out, so.
Yeah, so that's fine. You're gonna have what is.
Please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. For the record, John Nuff, 135 Broad Street, Milford, Connecticut, on behalf of the applicant, Heritage Downtown LLC. I've just handed out to you two different items. One is a small booklet with 5 different tabs. The second is a copy of the PowerPoint we're going to be presenting. Last week, I had sent Lori the PowerPoint that we used the zoning commission, and we abridged that. We shortened it a little bit, so that's what I just handed you this evening. So some is the same as what we presented to the zoning commission, but we tried to make it a little bit more brief. What I handed to you in the other packet has 5 exhibits. One is the revised language of the proposed definition of a residential treatment facility. We told you last time that we're going to be doing that, and I'll walk through that in a moment. The second 2 items are letters from the 2 different regional behavioral health action organizations, one from Southwest Connecticut and one from Western Connecticut Coalition. These together combine 14 towns from southwestern Connecticut, 43 towns in the Naugatuck River Valley and Western Connecticut, all funded by the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, supporting the certificate of need. And so obviously going to the providing evidence again of the need for this facility. Item number 4 is a resume, a very impressive resume of Peter Rockholz, who's going to be presenting to you this evening. Peter was actually the consultant hired by Haven to prepare the certificate of need for the state of Connecticut Department of Health. And then 5 is response memo from me to the frankly, the thoughtful memo prepared by LAS colleague, Brian McCann. So I'll be going through that once Peter concludes his comments. And, you know, I think it's sort of interesting. And as I said, Brian's memo was very thoughtful, but if you go through his memo, what you will not see in there is any discussion of need. It's not a relevant consideration under Connecticut zoning law in terms of a regulation amendment or even a special permit. So I'll leave it at that for the moment, but let's first talk about the revision to the language of residential treatment facility. From the beginning, it's always been our intent that this is going to be a purely residential facility. However, we need 2 different licenses from the states. One under 1980, 495, 570, the other under 550. And so the one under 550 also has the opportunity for outpatient services. But because there's 2 different licenses, out of caution, we included both in the initial definition. But this commission, as did the zoning commission, raised a relevant and important consideration. And so that's why we revised it. And the manner in which we revised it ensures that we can only do full-time residential and there will be no outpatient services at this facility whatsoever. I mean, I'd be happy to walk through it, but I think it's pretty straightforward. I think I'm going to leave it at that for a moment, and then I want Peter to discuss with you, his process with the departments and take you through the PowerPoint, because I think what you'll hear from him, as you heard from Jack last month, is really rather compelling. So let me turn it over to Peter, and then we'll talk about the responses both to Lori's memo and to Brian McCann's memo. Yes. PowerPoint. It will be presented, but Matt has kindly decided to share with yeah.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight a little bit about the Haven Health Management and the proposed program that's looking to occupy the Maple Street facility that's being represented by the landlords here. Let me just introduce myself a little bit so you know where I'm coming from. I am a consultant. My name is Peter Rockholz. I live in Greenwich. I I've been in the field of addiction and mental health for 50 years here in Connecticut. I operated residential treatment centers and worked in them, started them for the first half of that time, 25 years here in Connecticut. And also assisted in setting up facilities in many other states. I then served as Deputy Commissioner for the Connecticut Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. So I was responsible for all of the addiction services across the state of Connecticut under Governor Ralph. So the last 15, 20 years or so, I've been a consultant helping reputable organizations start up new programs that are greatly needed around the country, but in particular here in Connecticut and including Fairfield County, Central Connecticut, and so forth. I want to talk to you a little bit about what how we're going to do this. Can you project the talk a little bit about Haven Health Management. This is a healthcare organization that focuses specifically on behavioral health, meaning mental health services, addiction services. This is their specialty. They operate in 6 states. They have a very good reputation, as you can see in this slide here. They chose to be accredited by the Joint Commission on Accreditation. That is the gold standard for healthcare in general, but it's also the accreditation of choice for the inpatient addiction programs, because it's kind of the top of the heap of ensuring quality and safety for patients. Haven also is accredited by the Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities, which is another choice that they made to demonstrate their commitment to quality. And the CARP has teamed up with the American Society of Addiction Medicine, which is a national organization in the medical field that oversees the quality of addiction treatment programs in this country. So they're accredited both at the 2 levels of residential treatment that's being proposed here. Now that they didn't have to do that, they chose it. And of the 11 detox facilities that exist in Connecticut now, there's only one that has both of these. That's Mountainside up in Canaan, northwest corner. So they would be the only the second one in the state to have both dual accreditation.
Is there one from Haven that's in Connecticut?
No, they don't operate in Connecticut. They operate in Massachusetts nearby. Yeah, the nearest location. So we can go ahead, John, thanks. In terms of the security is really often a concern for facilities like this. And I think that, for the public's concern, there's a perception, in many cases, it's difficult for me to help organizations get situated because there's a stigma involved with people with addictive disorders. That they're dangerous, they're scary people, they're criminals, that they're going to be really wreaking havoc in our community. That's not the case. In fact, the opposite is the case. The opposite is that where these facilities are situated, the areas tend to be safer. In terms of actual security, the facilities are 24/7 supervised, including having nursing staff 24/7. And also having recovery advocate staff techs on 24/7. So it's a staff secure facility, which actually is proves to be a little more effective than locking doors on people, because when you lock doors on people, they start to feel like they're prisoners and they start to act that way. I've worked in prisons around the country and I know how that works. So it's actually a safer way to manage patients who, may be upset at times. They actually come in and they're really just very sick. They want to get better. They feel terrible. They just want to lie in bed as long as they're allowed to. and minimally participate in active treatment until their bodies and their brains are ready to do that. And so the other piece, aside from detox, which really is a medical procedure, medically supervised procedure, getting people prepared for the option to go into active treatment. This is the most important point in this process, is to get people engaged in active treatment. That's something that I visited the Haven facility in West Palm Beach, and I was very impressed by the way that the whole staff worked together, the quality of services, the communication, the organization. It was very, very, very well done. And it passed the litmus test for me, which the litmus test in our industry is this a place you would send a family member? And in my case, I would say the answer is absolutely, without hesitation. There's a 12-year record that Haven brings to this sort of field without any incidents, major incidents. I see the pictures. There are a number of pictures in the next few slides of the facility. That this is pretty typical of their facilities. Very attractive, welcoming, engaging, place where people feel comfortable and respected, which is important for them. And so that's a typical picture. You see some more. Okay, so yeah, I know there were some questions at some point about the need for this type of treatment. I've been in the field for 50 years. When I started in '72, we had a heroin epidemic, and the country wasn't prepared for it. We had to very quickly scale up nationally to meet the need and the demand for treatment. Here we are 50 years later, and it's 5 times worse than it was back then. And so while we've added some services across the state and across the country, it hasn't kept up with the demand in any way. 90% of the people who need this treatment, who qualify with a legitimate substance use disorder diagnosis, do not receive treatment. 90%. So, you've got a capacity that can handle 10% of people that need it. Obviously, there's an undeniable need nationwide, and Connecticut is probably on the lower half of that, meaning that there's more of a need here in Connecticut than many other states. The rate of substance use disorder in Connecticut is higher than the national average. And we have an old infrastructure here in Connecticut. It's mostly nonprofit facilities that have been around a long, long time and have not kept up with things. So now 85% of services in Connecticut for addiction are in the nonprofit sector. That's the highest in the country. In recent years, some new for-profit companies have come in to the state to help out and to build new facilities, which the infrastructure doesn't have the capacity to do, and the state of Connecticut can't afford to do. So Haven is proposing to be one of them. Obviously, the COVID pandemic certainly increased the need, increased particularly alcohol abuse across the state. But the need for treatment continued to be 90%. Tightly overlapping with suicide rates that also increased during that time, isolation, people not going out, not connecting with people. This is a disorder of disconnection. So why propose a service like this here in Naugatuck? Well, here's a map of the Naugatuck River Valley region, which is the proposed target for Haven here in Connecticut. Of these 29 municipalities on this map, there are no detox facilities in this area. There are some substance use disorder treatment programs. Waterbury has 17 licensed facilities, Naugatuck has none. But if you look at the next slide, you can see the considerable overlap with the incidence of overdose deaths. Pretty similar to that map. So one of the highest areas in Connecticut of overdose deaths and non-fatal overdoses overlaps with an area with no detox facilities. I put this map together to show you where the nearest licensed detox facilities are, and they're pretty much outside a 30-mile drive area, and mostly towards the south, New Haven, Bridgeport. And those both programs remain full. They're mostly programs that are serving the public sector, medically indigent population. This proposal to serve everyone, and primarily targeting people that have commercial insurance and the ability to pay and be reimbursed. But outside of that 30-mile drive, there's really nothing inside that region. So you're looking at providing a solution to a gap in services. It's pretty striking. John mentioned the letters from the Regional Behavioral Health Action Organizations that one of them was the Governor's Naugatuck, that very clearly indicated that one of the top priorities is the need for detox beds in the region. And so I can tell you that I am preparing the certificate of need application along with attorneys in Haven, where we have to demonstrate to the state that the service is needed, that there's a lack. And I'll tell you that I've done 14 of those applications over the years. I've never had a stronger case for need in any of my work. And so to me, it was, a task worth taking on because the need here is just so high. So I mentioned the American Society of Addiction Medicine. This is just a model of different levels of care going from the left to the right. The left is basically prevention, early intervention, identifying people early on who are showing signs of either having or developing a substance use disorder, to outpatient services, more intensive outpatient services, and then you cross the line into having residential where people cannot stay sober, cannot stay off drugs without being somewhat confined in a residential setting out of their environment that they can't manage on their own with outpatient service. So that's what we're proposing. And there are several levels of residential treatment. The ones that are proposed are the ones that are medically monitored, medically supervised, level 3.5 and level 3.7. And these are being proposed together, and there's a really important reason for that. As I said, the detox is really a medical procedure. It's not real treatment. As a standalone, somebody goes into a detox facility and goes back out to their home, goes back out into outpatient, they tend to come back. The relapse is very, very high, and so they tend to go back to what they were doing and come back at a very high rate without being connected directly to treatment. And so one of the benefits of having these two levels of care co-located, different floors, but co-located, is you now say, okay, you need to come downstairs and you need to get involved in treatment for a period of time, weeks, perhaps a month or two. That's the critical point of getting someone engaged in a process of treatment. And that's how you measure your greatest opportunity to have a successful outcome, is to make that handoff to treatment. Study by the Kaiser Family Foundation looked at public attitudes towards various aspects of our work, including making Narcan available. You probably have heard of Narcan, rather than when I was working for the governor in 2007, I proposed that we make Narcan available because there were significant increase in overdose. They told me to forget about it. If that hadn't happened, you may have saved 6,000-7,000 lives, but now you can get it practically over the counter. But the other thing that I think that is important in this survey was that the attitudes towards having addiction treatment centers in your community. Here you see it's a 91%. Okay, I had it right, 91% favorable rating. That's striking. 20 years ago, it was the opposite. We had, not in my backyard, it was the rule in Connecticut, not in a lot of places around the country. But the attitudes have changed because this is something that affects everybody's lives. There's probably no one in this room who doesn't have a family member, friend, or colleague that has had an issue with this, perhaps a death. I've had deaths in my family, friends. It affects everyone. And so it's a large piece of what changed this attitude towards accepting having really a medical service to provide healthcare to the community that's tremendously necessary. So there's an overlap between addiction and mental health. There are very few people who have addictive disorders who don't also have a diagnosable mental condition, might be anxiety or depression, might be something more significant, serious mental illness. There's a high correlation. So the facility and the staff have to be competent to deal with both at the same time. And that's something that's very obvious at the Havens facility that I saw in Florida. Co-occurring capability was very high. This is not a facility that's going to be taking people from prison, being released to the community. It's not something where people are going to be court ordered into this program. It's a private facility. People come if they want. They have to eat often. It's a matter of families encouraging people to come into treatment. The staff is going to be comprised of medical directors, advanced practice nursing, round the clock nursing, and mental health specialists. And I'll just finish up here. I think that's the last one. Was that? Is it the last one here? Yeah. So this was I was taking a look at, because I was trying to answer for myself the question that John suggested was being asked about what was your success rate? How successful is this? I've been around 50 years trying to come up with an answer to how you need to think about that or measure it. But what clearly is the case is that the connect to care rate it predicts outcomes. And I talked about that handoff from detox to residential treatment. How often that occurs predicts how long people stay in treatment and how they do afterwards and how long they remain abstinent. There's a study done out of Duke, I believe, involving Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, Oklahoma, and Washington State. You can see the connected care rates are about 15% on average. I asked Haven to give me their numbers, and it's 70%. They know what the goal is. When I walked around, every staff person there was focused on, let's keep this person here and let's get them connected to treatment. Striking that the culture, the organizational culture was focused around that. And so they end up with a connected care rate that is significantly higher than most states. And I think that should give you a thumbnail sketch of how successful this organization has been in other locations. So, thank you. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Are there any questions in the room?
The last time we met, discussed the Fair Housing Act, the Affordable Housing Act, and the American Disability Act were all mentioned multiple times. And I don't see the Affordable Housing Act addressed in this.
Oh, you need the lawyer for that.
So you, sir, are the ones who brought up this topic. I would like
No,
another explanation of why they tie in.
Understood, and I'm happy to do that, but it might be easier just for organizational purposes for me. I want to respond briefly to the memo that Lori prepared for you, and also the memo that Brian McCann prepared for you, and so we're happy to do it in that context of that motion. So in terms of Lori's memo, which is dated May 3rd, 2024, she has set forth certain provisions in your P O C D. She says the P O C D has the following guidance relative to those two aspects of the text amendment application, which the planning commission should consider in its deliberations. And she talks about how the P O C D talks about enhancing vibrancy, fostering a mix of businesses along major roadways, and ensuring diverse housing opportunities for residents of all income levels. So certainly, you know, and I know that there's a lot of talk, including in Brian's memo and your P O C D, about the type of vibrancy in the downtown area. And I'm not sure when you picture a vibrant area, I don't know if it's Boston, it could be New York, it could be New Haven, it could be, you know, whatever's in your mind's eye. Certainly residents play a component in creating vibrancy, but if they're working during the day and then they're home in the evenings and home on weekends, well, there's another critical component to that, which is employees, you know, businesses, and that's what your P O C D talks about, fostering a mix of businesses. Well, why is that? Because you want to employ the people in Naugatuck, and you want people downtown to be able to frequent. You have a, you know, I did a Google search. There's, you know, a number of downtown restaurants. There's a coffee shop. There's a bakery. There's our delis. Whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, any of these services. These are people who, very caring people, obviously, who will have the ability to go and visit all those different shops, restaurants that you have in downtown Naugatuck. That is one of the components to vibrancy, and that's why you call it out in terms of fostering a mix of businesses. Even Lori's second comment, offering working, shopping, dining in a visually appealing and distinctive identity. Well, you already have a visual appealing, distinctive building. And again, so you want to give people that, bring people to work and shop and dine in the downtown area. So I think in that way, the application is consistent with your P O C D. In terms of responding to Brian's memo, I gave you a formal response behind tab 5. You know, when we were here last time, I mentioned to you that you have two considerations on a legislative act, which is a zone change or a reg change. One is to consider the P O C D, and we just did that, we'll do that a little bit more, but also we have to take into account the comprehensive plan. And Brian does a good job setting forth that one of the tests of a comprehensive plan is whether it is in the best interest of the community. It's promoting the best interest of the entire community. And so my response is, viewed most narrowly, the community would be limited to the borough of Naugatuck. But even from this unnecessarily restrictive perspective, an approval of the application is in the best interest of the community. Now we're talking about pure Connecticut zoning law. First, the residential treatment facility will benefit the residents of Naugatuck. Unquestionably, there will be residents of the borough who will be treated at this facility. But let's assume that they're not. As indicated in the memo, and as I think you all know intuitively, and as we testified for the past 2 evenings, this is a disease that infiltrates families, friends, friend networks, businesses. If you own a business and one of your employees is out because of this reason, it affects you. So there's no question that residents of the borough of Naugatuck are likely to be here, but even more certainly, family members, businesses, colleagues of people with this disease are going to be treated in this facility. So therefore, it is in the best interest. The use itself is in the best interest of the Naugatuck community. Second, as I indicated, we'll employ approximately 60 people conservatively. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Probably the largest shift is going to be between 25 and 30 people coming to Naugatuck every day who will want a sandwich, a cup of coffee, a baked good, something to help create some vibrancy. And again, these are nurses, healthcare professionals, highly educated, well-paid deeply caring people that I would think you would want frequenting your downtown area. And it's an employment opportunity for Naugatuck residents as well. The third reason why it's in the best interest of the community is you'll have a fully tenanted building that help further support the tax assessment on that property. The property's been largely vacant since it's been constructed, no abatement of any kind. Finally, the building will be fully tenanted. But let me give you a different perspective on the best interest of the community. I don't think we ought to be so. I don't think a very circumscribed notion of community is appropriate for this type of use. Certainly, if you're preparing or you're submitting a regulation on an application on what the height of a building should be in the downtown, what the density of the downtown should be. Yeah, I think, confining yourself to the four corners of the Borough of Naugatuck is entirely appropriate. I think in this setting, you need to have a more realistic and frankly, a more sympathetic perspective of what the community is. And I think the community in this setting goes beyond the confines of the Borough of Naugatuck and embraces the entire Naugatuck River Valley, as Peter eloquently described, the dramatic need for it. And even broader than that, throughout the state of Connecticut. I think there's like 43 towns in one group and 14 in the other. That's about a third of the towns in Connecticut that are supporting a residential treatment facility in this location. So no matter how you define community, whether it's just Naugatuck or what I would argue is a better perspective of community that supports the approval of the regulation. Now, Brian also, as a way of helping to guide your discussion, posed 7 different questions. One is, how does this application for residential treatment facilities tie into the borough's focus on transit development in the downtown area? Or go back to the issue of vibrancy. You want employees downtown, you want well-paid, highly educated employees, and we do that. And they'll have an opportunity to visit all your local businesses. I mentioned some of them, Nardello's, Coffee Shop, Players at Maple Street Bakery, the Station Restaurant. All would be opportunities for these employees to visit and frequent. The second question is, why did the borough decide not to allow senior residential communities or assisted living facilities in the zone? Well, you do allow hospitals, convalescent homes, nursing homes, residential. 5 units were approved at that site. If I were a downtown business, and you said to me, what would you rather have? 5 residential units or 60 employees? That's a no-brainer for me. I would take the business with 60 employees. So he points out that senior residential communities are not permitted. In response, hospitals, convalescent homes, nursing homes, medical office, residential, hotels are all permitted in the zone. So it's entirely consistent with the zone. He says, how would public health, safety, convenience, and property values be affected if the proposed use were considered similar to multifamily residential? Well, it is in fact multifamily residential, but public health, safety, and convenience, those don't need a response because for the reasons we just described. In terms of property values, again, I think local nearby property owners would like to see a fully tenanted building that's employing 60 people a day, 365 days a year. His next question is, does the application promote the best interest of the community? Well, I just described how to. Oh, number 4. Why did the borough put a lot size density restriction on hospitals, convalescent home, nursing home? I don't really know why. I never really understood why. You'll oftentimes see that on multifamily residential projects, but nonetheless, even if you're applying our case, we have a little over 2.5 acres. We have 23 units, so that requires 57,500 square feet. So we comply with that minimum unit requirement that is in other that applies to other uses. Number 6, is there a public need for such a facility? And is this application an appropriate means of meeting that need? Again, I don't know how need comes up, but I think as Peter has testified and Jack testified last time, that you have the letters, you have the Naugatuck Valley health report, there is a unanimous and overwhelming demonstration of the need for this facility. And I don't think anyone can reasonably argue to the contrary. So even if need is a relevant factor, I think you satisfy that question. The last is, would the granting be a reasonable accommodation for the residential treatment facilities be at odds with the downtown zoning scheme? Would it result in a fundamental or unreasonable change? So here's where we shift into the federal Fair Housing Act. So what we were just talking about before, Brian Smell talked primarily about issues related to the approval of a legislative act, a regulation amendment, or a zone change map amendments in the context of the requirements of Connecticut law, statutes and case law. His last question is really directed toward the Fair Housing Act. And so there's actually three different ways that there could be a violation of the Fair Housing Act. One is the failure to make a reasonable accommodation. That's what he talks about primarily. The other two are in intentional discrimination and disparate impact. Now, we'll leave aside intentional discrimination, but disparate impact simply requires proof that a facially neutral policy unjustifiably falls more harshly on a protected group than others. You have a set of regulations that don't allow for this use anywhere in your town. That's a facially neutral policy. Then the question would be, does it unjustifiably fall more harshly on a protected group than others? I don't know how to answer that other than yes. But to the extent we're going to focus on the reasonable accommodation claim. So what the case law says, in the context of a municipal zoning dispute, an accommodation is unreasonable if it imposes undue financial or administrative burdens on the community, and the accommodation does not result in a fundamental and unreasonable change in the zoning scheme of the district. So if you read these cases, undue financial or administrative burden, none of those do not apply here. There's been no evidence, there's been no discussion that adding this residential treatment facility will in any way cause the Borough of Naugatuck any financial harm of any kind. And that's not the test. It's whether it's an undue financial or administrative burden. So if you read other cases, and let's say, for instance, there's a methadone fund, people have complained that there'll be greater need for a police force, or whatever there might be, or greater oversights, and courts will consider those sorts of things. In this case, none of those apply. So there's no financial or administrative burden on the Borough of Naugatuck whatsoever as a result of its use. And then the other question is, does it result in a fundamental and unreasonable change in the zoning scheme of the district? For the reasons I indicated, it does not. You have many other similar uses. We have a hospital right next door, which is what we're doing. Residential uses were permitted in our building, and you just approved them across the street. So I guess at the end of the day, whether you want to analyze our requests under Connecticut zoning law, we comply. Whether you want to analyze it under the Federal Fair Housing Act, we comply. And we hope that you would view this, in the manner that's being presented, that it is responding to a dramatic need in the community, a dramatic need to frankly service probably people that we're certainly familiar with, that we know, and maybe some cases we love. And that's our hope. And we'd be happy to answer any questions, but as I said, regardless of what rubric under which you want to analyze the applications, Fair Housing Act or Connecticut case law, we comply. But to the extent that the two conflict, the Fair Housing Act governs.
So, having done that, last time you mentioned multiple times the American Disability Act and Affordable Housing Act, and I waited.
I never mentioned the affordable housing. This has nothing to do with affordable housing. I mentioned the ADA
And the case law under the ADA is the same as the Fair Housing Act. I promise you, I never mentioned, if you're talking about 8-30G, never came up.
So. Both times you mentioned. Fees and ADA. In what way does ADA apply? The building is already compliant.
Well, it's not in terms of accessibility, whether someone can get into a building in a wheelchair. The fact is that people who have misused substances are deemed to be handicapped and can take advantage of the Fair Housing Act. So it has nothing to do with whether there's a ramp for someone in a wheelchair. I mean, that can apply. Fair Housing Act applies to those people as well, but that's not the handicap that we're discussing here.
So what case law under ADA applies?
As I said, I've read probably more cases than I care to, but in every case, the prefatory language in the case says the same thing, which is the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act both apply, and we'll be considering those together. And if I'm wrong, I'm sure Elliot can straighten me out, but I think that's of the several dozen cases I've read, they pretty much all say the same thing in that regard. And keep in mind, the question is it a reasonable accommodation? A reasonable accommodation. And it's unreasonable if it's going to cost the town an undue amount of money to police, to service. You see this come up in traffic issues, sewer issues. It's a whole different host of issues that a town or municipality may have an argument. Candidly, towns rarely win, but that's the context in which that often comes up. Here, none of those apply. There's no cost to the Borough of Naugatuck once this facility becomes operational.
It seems like to me that you're using, when you're talking to fair housing, you're talking about it as a protected class of people.
Well, yeah, we are, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And the borough, through our small cities grant program, has stated multiple times that it is our goal to affirmatively further fair housing.
No, and I've read that as well.
And that is something that this town, by doing the small cities programs, has expected us to do. It's one of the requirements of that small cities grant program. I just had a couple questions in regard to what does like the advertising look? How do people find out about this? I mean, I see your logo, the Haven. Is that what's the advertising that's going to be kind of at your spot on the building, or how would a person just walking by look over and know what the Haven is?
Cheyenne, did you hear that question? Can you? I always thought this.
He's on.
And while Cheyenne's trying to come on, the other question would be, you mentioned about how vehicles go to pick people up. How many vehicles would you be saying are stored, and do they have markings on the vehicles? Are they unmarked vehicles? Most of my experience that I've seen, they're usually unmarked.
Cheyenne, could you hear that?
You have to unmute.
He needs to move second.
Okay,
Go ahead.
can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I'm operating from a computer screen as well because I have a video in case John wants me to show it. But short answer on the signage, that would just be standard signage that would say something like the Haven Detox of Connecticut. And it would have our standard logo. We have a marketing department that does, most of our marketing is digital. And we have a marketing department in Florida that handles all that. It's a lot of guys that are and guys and gals who are intimately familiar with digital marketing space. And then as far as the vehicles, we use standard Ford Explorer. So we would expect to find a local dealership. We would buy probably 6 Ford Explorers, and we would hire people to drive each of those, and they would be on the road, as needed, but typically, once or twice a day, but always as needed. And, that's 6 new employees that will be driving those vehicles.
I have a couple for Peter. He can come back. Last month to this month, I detect a major shift in your presentation from substance abuse and rehab to detox as the primary purpose of the building. And Trian just said, Haven detox of Connecticut. Please discuss that emphasis shift, and also on the last treatment goal slide you had up.
Right.
The primary outcome of a detox facility is to ensure patients connect to treatment. What do you mean by that? Do you mean, as was mentioned, going from the first floor to the second floor, or walking out the front door and going somewhere else? How do you measure that?
Right. I think in most cases, it's going upstairs or downstairs, however they choose to configure it. But the starting
Contain care then.
inside the facility.
Yeah.
Yeah, same facility. So they move between floors, and that's the.
And that percentage is,
But their track record is.
well, yeah, I mean, it's 100% of the 70%. Stay within your facility?
No, I'm sure there'll be some percentage that want to relocate back to, wherever they're outside town they come from. They may, have an outpatient facility that they want to connect with. They may not qualify, in terms of diagnosis and in terms of medical necessity, which has to be demonstrated for that level of care. That's a small percentage of people, I believe. Yeah.
And the detox component
Right.
is voluntary.
Yes.
Not getting commitments from hospitals.
No.
Police are
No,
totally
all
voluntary.
voluntary, right?
And I guess my last question is, broadly speaking, how many clients are from the community where the facility exists versus outside of the geographical boundaries of the community where it exists?
Yeah, and obviously that
Not
remains,
bigger community.
sure, that obviously that remains to be seen, but typically you'll see 25% very closely, another 25% as you move up. The target service area is within about 15 miles, 25 miles. That's the target broad facility. Target. So yeah, 25% probably in Naugatuck and maybe the surrounding towns and then move out center. That's pretty typical.
And if I could add to that, we selected this specific location because we found a need in this location. So, we try and go where the need is. So we would expect, a pretty substantial patient population from this in the Naugatuck Valley area. So it could be more than 25%, but that's why we selected this specific location, because there appears to be substantial need.
But your target client and someone important. I'll put words in your mouth and slap it down if I want. Your target client is an individual who requires detox.
I think maybe Cheyenne has a better answer. I mean, typically that's the point of entry. It's, people seek help for this type of disorder when they're in dire straits, when they're, they're either physically terrible shape, or in terms of family says, you're done, you need to go and start a detox. Typically, these are people on the higher end of severity of the addictive disease. And they tend to need that to stop it. And that's pretty much where, there you say most people started that level of care, Giant.
I wouldn't even say that, to be honest. A lot of folks do, but it depends. The folks who come in, who are currently suffering or under the influence, we call that detox because we have to taper them down off of a certain level of intoxication, whether it's, opiates or alcohol or otherwise. Those are the folks who are going to come in and need detox level of care. Once we've stabilized them from a medical perspective, then they can step down into residential level of care and start their actual recovery process. So that detox is a medical process. The recovery, or excuse me, the residential is a therapy and more of a clinical process. And it's hard to say with whether or not and the extent to which folks are going to come in for detox in particular. Most people, though, we like to see them come in for detox and then follow up with good quality residential care with us.
I actually have a question on that regarding the use of items in their care. Is methadone one of the treatments that would be provided for them? And if so, is there a proper way of disposing of the containers afterwards, i.e. the bottles that the methadone or something like that would come in?
Yeah, so you're going to be very clear that this is not a methadone clinic that's being proposed here. So there are no bottles, there are no containers. By regulation, the facility as a detox facility has to be approved to have methadone on hand. It's in tablet form, and that's for pregnant women. And that's highly regulated by DEA, by the federal government, by the State Department of Consumer Protection. And it's a very unusual, I would say less than 1% are going to be using methadone. There are other medications that are approved by the FDA for opioids. You're talking about people coming in opioids, and that's probably the lesser percentage of presenting drugs. Alcohol is, I would say, 70–75% of the population. That's the reason they're coming in here, not opiates requiring methadone. Does that answer?
It does. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, I did have one other question. I'm going back to council's comments. You stated that your clients are a protected class or handicapped.
Correct.
Is that is there case law on that? I used to work in the courts. I never heard of a person who is addicted having a class such as that.
Can I answer quick, John?
Yeah, sure, go ahead, sir.
There's a leading case out of the Sixth Circuit, which has been generally applied across the country. It's called MX Group versus City of Covington. It's a case out of Covington, Kentucky, where a local zoning board made it particularly difficult for a facility like this to open. And ultimately, the federal court said, hey, these are protected folks, and you can't discriminate them in making zoning decisions. You can't discriminate against them and put additional hurdles in front of them just because of who they are and what they're trying to do. They applied it not only to the patients, but to the companies that were serving those patients. So MX Group Inc. was actually a methadone clinic. It was a much more complicated or more, I should say, difficult type of operation. Our operation is much more tame than the type of operation there. And the local zoning board was still turned out to be wrong. And the court said that the ADA and the Fair Housing Act both applied to that specific use and prohibited that discrimination. So if you want to take a note, it's MX Group Inc. versus City of Covington. And it's a Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals case. A lot of case law federally has been built on that case in particular.
And I would tell you that there are mountains of cases indicating, and by the way, I don't think Attorney Pollack would in any way disagree with me that, so here's what it says. Fair Housing Act prohibits a broad range of housing practices that discriminate against individuals on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, or national origin. Disability is defined in the FHA as including, quote, individuals with a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. The term physical or mental impairment includes, in relevant part, mental illness, drug addiction, and alcoholism. And that's actually in the memo that we submitted the very first evening. So unquestionably, the Fair Housing Act does comply. You know, and if I could interject one last thing, you know, I was at the very end of my presentation, I wasn't pausing for dramatic effect. I was actually trying to come up with the other thought that I had, which is, you know, when talking about case law, you see many of these cases arise in the context of a single family home being used as a quote sober house, where they will have a number of individuals, 10, 12, 14 people, who are all going through rehabilitation in a single family home, in a single family neighborhood. There, the courts again have supported that they have the right to be there. So if a town has a limit on the number of people who can live in a single family home, if they have a limit that only family members can live in a single family home, those go by the wayside under the Fair Housing Act if the people are disabled in the manner that we've been talking about. So in this case, you have a radically different scenario than a sober house in a single family zone. Our folks come in and they stay there until they're allowed to leave or after or they finish their treatment, and then they're driven home by a loved one or one of our staff members. Not to say that they wouldn't be welcome or wouldn't be, or that they would be a danger in a single family zone, but in this case, you know, you don't have that concern. But know for the record that Ellie was not in this, I mentioned.
I guess one of my major concerns is this is like, we're the town, the state, and we have investors investing millions of dollars into downtown. And when I asked last time by Naugatuck, you just simply said it was an 18,000 square foot building that was located, I mean, and it's real estate and I understand that, but like, you know, we have a lot of people relying on the fact that we're putting, you know, a transit oriented, you know, development downtown. I don't necessarily feel it's consistent with that. I mean, I don't think it complements it. And it's, you know, within the area. I don't know. I have a tough time.
Well,
And you know, you could not, I mean, I expected a little bit more from you last time. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. As far as like, why Naugatuck? And you just said it was a building and I'm kind of thrown off by that. I was then and I am now.
well, I think Peter has done a far better job than I did last time explaining why. Because if you saw the overlap between where there's the greatest number of incidents of alcohol and drug misuse is in the valley. And also the greatest number, the lack of any treatment facility is also in the valley.
Well, I guess, you know, in particular, I don't disagree with what you're saying as far as the need. I'm just saying right next door. You know, within the town, it doesn't, I mean.
No, so let's talk about that more. I'm going to repeat some of what I said in terms of the two different rubrics. But if you think about the comprehensive plan, best interest of the community, why wouldn't you want 60 well-educated, caring employees frequenting your shops and restaurants? I cannot see how the Borough of Naugatuck is better off in any way by having 5 residential units in their building rather than 60 employees. It makes no sense to me. That is the easiest question you'll ever be posed.
Can I respond to that?
What's that?
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, sure.
So those 60 employees, you have a fully contained cafeteria for everyone else. Those employees, chances are they're gonna be getting free meals from that facility. Why would they go outside? So they're not going to be frequenting Nardelli's or the coffee shop or even the station. So why
Well,
That's- And
I think that
then
the
to get
catering
on top of
services.
what, to get on top of what she said. We had duck day down here over the weekend, okay? The kids that are walking down the street with tents set up and whatnot, okay, are looking up into those windows. And people looking back down on them, okay? What's to prevent your clients from running down the stairs and running into the crowd and disappearing into the crowd?
A
It's
very
not a
well-
locked facility.
A very well trained staff. I mean, I mean, but that's.
I disagree.
Would you put a flag, let's not put a flagpole up in downtown Naugatuck, because you might get struck by lightning. That's the equivalent.
That's not.
It is.
We could agree to
And
disagree.
let's, so if we're talking about the best interest of the community, you want to put all that aside, then let's go to the Fair Housing Act. They have a right to live here. You have residential across the street, the new
Then
Penrose.
put somewhere else in Naugatuck. It doesn't have to be right in downtown when we're revitalizing downtown.
You have no place in town that permits this use. That's a reasonable accommodation. And I'd be happy to repeat the disparate impact discussion too.
Hey, John, I think this is an important consideration in response to this question, which is, you would not suggest that someone who is disabled because they're in a wheelchair should not leave the facility and enter into a crowd of people. And so for that same reason, you should not suggest that someone who leaves our facility should not enter into a crowd of people, because what you're saying is people in our facility, because of their specific type of disability, should not be able to leave. That in itself is discriminatory. You're changing the analysis based on the disability itself, which is a violation of the ADA. That's what John is getting at. We cannot distinguish between these folks and any other type of disability. This is a very important distinction that you cannot make as part of this analysis.
Good evening. My name is Rob Orris. I'm one of the two partners of the building next door. I have an office at 25 Candy Hill Road, Watertown, Connecticut. Do you need my home address? No, my office address is okay. I would just like to respond to the commissionwoman's statements about we have a bunch of people who want to invest millions of dollars across the street. Well, none of that has happened yet. So those are promises. Whether it'll happen or not, we don't know. What I do know is my partner and I have invested $6.5 million right out the window that you can touch and feel every day. So I take severe exception to you supporting other people who claim they may invest in this community sometime down the road, when nobody wanted to invest in this property across the street here, my building, 58 Maple Street. My partner and I stepped up to the plate. And we got hammered in the commission meetings because we had some issues with our primary tenant at the time. And we wanted to phase the building in order to properly bring this building into the community when demand arose. The commission said, absolutely not. You're bamboozling us. You build the whole building. So we did. We dipped into our pocket $6.5 million. I would like you all to look out the window and see it, because you can touch and feel it. And many of you park in the parking lot every day as well, so you're welcome for that. So I take severe exception that you would suggest that somehow those investors that haven't even arrived here yet are more important to me and my partner who have invested $6.5 million right here. Thank you.
I will say this, since that was directed at me. I will say that last session, I felt a little bullied by throwing just the ADA and stuff. And I feel that is rather aggressive as well. So, I mean, I wasn't gonna say I felt bullied last week, but I definitely will say I feel bullied right now. And I do not respond well to being bullied, because I would prefer you work on your merits. And if you have parents, you wouldn't have to bully me. And I feel like that's how I respond. You know, but that's me.
I think the point is that we have presented the merits of both the standards under Connecticut case law and statutes, as well as the Fair Housing Act. And frankly, there's been no response. It's just, well, we don't believe you, we don't, we disagree with you, we reject that proposition. So,
I did not say that.
well, I mean, again, we went to the question of need, why here? It's not relevant under either scenario. Look at Brian's memo, he never talks about it, he does a very good job. What is the standard for a regulation amendment under Connecticut law? There is no discussion of need. You don't ask McDonald's, do we need another fast food restaurant? You didn't ask Rob when he was putting a medical office building in, do we need a medical office? You never asked that question for any other use, but you're asking it here. And we've answered it, by the way, in as compelling a manner as possible. I'm sorry?
A detail, but, and that, to stop that distinction, the medical office building is allowed.
Correct, but no one asks why, but again, whether it's, if for a regulation amendment, is the question of why is never relevant, or is it needed?
John, you want to look on page 3, right?
Oh, Brian's memo? Yeah.
I didn't say it.
No, I know he asked the question, but in the discussion of Connecticut case law, need never arises. I know he asked the question, but I don't know where that arises from. Does it arise from his discussion of the Fair Housing Act or from the comprehensive plan?
Well, read the memo.
I mean, and I don't think anyone can disagree that there is a need for this facility. By the way, here's the point about the Fair Housing Act. And this is like, you'll see this throughout the law. There's a reason why certain things don't go to local zoning. You want to put up a public utility facility, electric generating plants, cell towers now. Any of those sorts of things, big battery plants, they go to the Connecticut Study Council. Why? Because every town's gonna say, well, we don't need it, we don't want it, put it someplace else. That's sort of the role of the Fair Housing Act here, which is everyone's gonna say, put it someplace else. If we keep on saying put it someplace else, then people never get treated because they never get built. Somewhere you have to draw a line that says, this is a reasonable location for this. It is a residential use. It is consistent with the residential use that is permitted under your regulations. The medical office use that's permitted. Your hospital convalescent home uses that are consistent with your regulations. So this is a perfect spot for it. But if every town were simply to say, put it someplace else, there'd be an awful lot of untreated people.
Is the FHA, the FHA define residence and residency in any aspect? Is 30 days in a rehabilitation facility considered a residence?
Oh, it could be like,
Opposed to temporary?
it could be considerably shorter than that, particularly in the context I mentioned before, which is.
I'm asking you how FHA define, when you say they're entitled to a residence.
Right.
Because they are protected class.
Could be far shorter, and it's that sober houses are the best example, where people could live there for several weeks. So there's no question that this residential use would come under the FHA.
Have you revised the plans to show the outdoor space that was supposed to be there? 'Cause I don't see it in this document here.
No, it's not in there. I mean, so we do have a plan that shows it. Cheyenne, I don't know if you have an opportunity to, call out the image that Jack has sent us, but it's just a representative image. Or, yeah, I don't think we can have, if you allow Cheyenne to
Yeah.
share a screen.
Cause it seems that the only viable spot for that would be to protrude out into the sidewalk right next to my eye doctor.
Oh, no, it's in the back. That was part of the packet last time. I'm sorry, let me get that for you.
Cheyenne, we can't hear you, but I did make you a co-host. If you're able to put that document up.
Okay,
Oh, there you are. That shows the outside patio area.
You want me to discuss this?
Yeah.
okay, here we go. Can you see that?
It hasn't popped up yet.
No.
You have to share your screen.
Yeah, I hit the, oh, here we go. Okay, I think I have it now.
All right, so we have two things. This is a representative sample of a outdoor facility or outdoor area of one of Haven's other locations, but we also have a site plan as well that depicts the location of events. Wait,
So until Cheyenne, if he can put it up, if not, we can certainly submit this to you, but SLR, Darren Overton from SLR had put this together, and it's essentially a 10 by 24 area that comes off the northwestern corner of the building, which you can all see right here where the jog is facing the town hall on the back side of the building. It's gonna be butting up against what hopefully will be a drive-through facility in that grassed area. The last 3 parking spots against this end of the building will be removed. That concrete structure, the sidewalk, will be extended to meet the 10 by 24 foot area. There will be a white solid fence installed. There will be bollards installed to protect any cars from going through the facility. So there'll be 6 bollards there, and we'll get you a layout of this. I thought Darren had sent it in. Jim, I'm sure he'll be sending it to you because I know you've asked this question a number of times. I can email it to you right now if you'd like.
Have the other picture of it?
I do.
Right now, I would say she- it's kind of big, unfortunately.
I'm sorry, Jim, what's your email?
Jay Stewart. SWWART@Naugatuck.
No, I already took that CT to.
Dash.
Yep, I got it, great, thank you. I just sent it, Jim, hopefully you have it. And as we said, there'll only be one access point to that outdoor area, which will be from inside the building. So there will not be any gates or doors or anything that will allow anyone to leave that outdoor area. It'll be protected with the bollards from any cars. It will be secured with the fence, very much like what you see, and that's what it'll look like inside. Just allows patients and staff to get out and get some fresh air.
Folks, I'm sharing my screen. I don't know what you're seeing. I'm sorry. to interrupt.
So Cheyenne, if you could stop the share, I think Jim can.
Jim, did you get it?
Yeah.
on.
Thank you.
So page 2 of that,
Yeah, the second page, I think, gives you more details. We can just zoom in on that. You'll be able to see it. And my apologies, I thought Darren Overton had sent it also. Make sure that this commission and certainly zoning and everyone has a copy of this. You obviously have it now.
So Joe, I don't know if you can zoom in, but we talk about this area here. Okay. It's just got to be.
down.
Down to the right. There you go.
All right, great, thank you. So here's the detail that Rob was just discussing. So we have a fenced area. It says, this is the existing concrete sidewalk. Extend the concrete to create a 10 by 24 concrete pad, similar to the photograph you just saw. There will be bollards around the outside of the fence to prohibit any intrusions by cars or vehicles. 6-foot white vinyl fence with 6-foot bollards. And this is the only means of getting into or out of that outdoor area, which is from within the facility itself.
And while we're losing 3 parking spaces, we have more than would be required. And if need be, certainly Darren Overton could speak to that at any time. But we have more than an allowable or required amount of parking, even with the loss of the 3 spaces.
And there was, as we were pointing out, I saw that one of the commission, I think it's the commission member, he was after the disability. Again, it goes back to a disability is defined as including individuals with a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. And that includes drug addiction and alcoholism.
Thank you. I was looking at it I was looking at the Commission of Human Rights and Opportunities. And they didn't state, theirs was age, ancestry, color, learning disability, military status, intellectual disability, physical disability, mental disability. They didn't say specific what you just said, but I understand that now. Thank you.
Yep.
Do you have any data that defines the number of people seeking residential treatment that are not getting it?
Yeah, I mean,
Because this is all.
well, I mean, Peter indicated that only about 10% of the need is being met.
Yeah, that's broad general. I mean, in our community, capital C, do you have any data of people seeking treatment?
Well, we can go back to those spheres of shows. I mean, we can go back to that slide.
Also, if I may, I would also ask you to look at the reports that we submitted. I think the first round, the community health improvement plan, which was done by your health district and signed by Pat Charmel from Griffin Health. That report really specifically outlines the great need for these services. As a matter of fact, it's such a great need that it was one of the 4 top criteria that needed to be addressed in this Naugatuck Valley region. And, I reached out to Pat. I was hoping that he would come and speak to it since he did sign the report, but I was unable to reach him. But nonetheless, he did sign that report. He's obviously very aware of the needs in the area. And I'm sure you all know, Mr. very well. And obviously you're familiar with your health district individual. So I would ask you to look at that report, plus obviously there's significant state report that's in there as well, that I think might answer some of those questions. Thank you.
I did miss, what type of fencing was that gonna be applied around that area?
It's a solid 6 foot white vinyl fence.
Okay, thank you.
And by the way, the report that Rob just mentioned was at tab 4 of the handout from our first night, the Naugatuck Valley Community Health Improvement Plan. And actually what that plan says, and we read from it that night, is that this is one of the top 2 priorities. The valley continues to experience high rates of substance use among residents. The opioid crisis persists in the valley. And although this is a statewide and national issue, the valley continues to lose individuals due to fatal overdose and experience both high non-fatal overdose and substance use disorder rates. The focus areas from 2022, 2024 CHIP are mental health 1 and substance use and misuse 2. And then on page 16, overdoses remain one of the 5 causes of premature deaths from 2015 to 2021. The number of fatal overdoses caused by opioids in the valley has more than tripled since 2014. Non-fatal overdoses are also a major concern in the valley.
Mr. Rock also indicated that 75% of the patients here will be alcohol use.
I think 70 or 75, yes.
That's a rough guesstimate, yeah. And we don't know who's gonna come here to say, I mean, that's nationally, that's pretty much the range, yeah. And you have, most people are doing both. So, and maybe have someone who's involved with alcohol as a primary drug of choice, but also using benzodiazepines and other prescription opiates.
The last 3 cases that we will now refer to, John, speak about public media. So I just wondered if you have any data on the need for residential treatment. Right, as opposed to just substance abuse treatment.
I'm sorry, you said the last 2 cases.
In Brian's memo.
So are you talking about?
Take a moment, so. Page 2.
Gotcha, okay. Of course, a lot of zoning authorities is this discretion to determine the public need and means of meeting it. Right, so Cameo Park Homes, I guess, is the case.
Well, it's First Harvard Realty, Family Park Homes, and Malafronte. So,
Well, at First Hartford is promoting the best interests of the entire community, which we addressed. So to me, that doesn't speak to me, but yes, the second case does mention need. So do we have data specific to the Borough of Naugatuck about the need for a residential treatment facility?
or any day, whether you define the community as Naugatuck or the larger community that you refer to.
I mean, I don't know what else we can do. We've given you letters from 2 different regional groups that cover a third of the state of Connecticut. We have the Naugatuck Valley's own health report. We have the state of Connecticut report. We have the data that Peter and Jack have shared with you. I mean, I'm not sure what else we could possibly, unless you like it to canvas, go door to door. I don't know, frankly, but Elliot, here's the point. I don't think there's anything we can provide that's reasonable that would ever, claim to satisfy.
No, the issue is simply, there are 2 forms of treatment, residential and outpatient. And you put a lot of evidence before you mentioned about the need for opioid treatment in general. And probably it'd be very difficult for everybody to argue that in general proposition. But you're talking about residential treatment for majority population, most of whom are alcoholics. And so data about those facilities and the need for those facilities would be helpful in understanding.
So as compared to outpatient services.
I think perhaps I think just residential treatment, what need is there for residential treatment? You're saying it, but. And when we miss something, we don't see any of the data. That would,
Well, I guess I'm trying to understand. What is deficient in what we presented when we have various independent outside entities, including from the Naugatuck Valley itself, indicating that there is a desperate need for these types of facilities.
there's some, in this submission, there's some reference to what you said. But is there, you have any,
Some reference is the second most important component that they identify.
do you have any data about the need for residential treatment per se? And if you don't, you do.
It's not a question of whether we do or don't, it's whether you choose to ignore it. Which frankly you're doing. I mean, I can,
Please direct the commission to.
I can repeat again what the Naugatuck Valley chip says. I mean, I guess the question is, how many people need to die to be satisfied? How many people need to have treatment?
That's very unfortunate. But
But where else are we supposed to go?
I read their report, and there was no reference to residential treatment that I heard. Can you please correct me if I'm wrong?
Residential as compared to,
Residential treatment.
but is there a need for residential treatment? Yes. But I don't know whether you're trying to create a distinction between residential treatment and some other form of treatment.
The question.
And on top of that, I think, well, Jack and Peter have identified the reason why you need to have people with this handicap who are misusing drugs and alcohol. You need to get them out of their environments. They need to be, I think Jack spoke very eloquently about this. They need to be in a safe place away from the circumstances that created that issue to begin with. That seems to me very logical. And I'm sure that there's medical data to support that. That, I mean, I think it just stands to reason that let's get this person out of their work environment, home environment, whatever environment it is, so they can receive intensive treatment. So is there a need for that for residential treatment? Yes, of course, for the reasons that they identify. But if you want to hang your decision on that one reference in case law and ignore the FHA and ignore the true purpose of a comprehensive plan discussion.
No, because no ignoring anything. The question has been posted and the answer has been requested.
And I think we've answered in abundance.
The need you speak to get the individual. In general, everybody would agree. The facility being proposed to meet the requirements of this zoning change requires that individual to take the first step. Contact you. Get me in.
Correct.
That's my wife, call me down and nod. That's different than throwing up the generality of B versus the data to support an operation. Which is why we keep asking for
Well, I guess
quantitative.
I guess I'm trying to understand.
Quantitative data.
I guess I'm trying to understand the question. I mentioned last time that I know closely 6 people who have needed this type of treatment. Those who have needed it, they were confronted, either the friend was arrested and released, and he knew at that moment his life had become so low, he needed treatment. And he called around and got help. He went to a residential treatment facility. Another friend, bad car accident, got hooked on opioids. He's confronted by his 4 sons and said, "Dad, you need to go." So yes, is it voluntary? Yes, they're not being put in handcuffs and shackles and dragged in here. It is voluntary because they are confronted by loved ones who know that they need help.
Not arguing with that. Not arguing with that at all. Asking of the universe of people who need help, Where's the quantitative data that supports the need to create this facility? That's, and so your question, it's not counterintuitive or.
Well, I don't know what else we can do other than point you again to that map that shows the highlight. This is the towns with the high rates of overdose deaths. This isn't just overdose. These are people who are dying, which is recognized by the Naugatuck Valley Health District, which is recognized by the state of Connecticut, which is recognized by the two groups that represent 50 to 60 towns in Connecticut. I mean, do you think they're making this up?
What we're asking for is data behind that slide. You are giving us anecdotally. Reference, nobody. I don't think nobody, no thinking person denies there's a need. But every time we ask for data, we get anecdotes, we get referrals, we get, oh, that's nice. Where's the data behind the creation of that slide?
John, and I wasn't prepared to talk that much about data and need because I wasn't sure that was the purview of the commission. So, if you want to have access to the data, I can, it'll be public information when we submit the certificate of need application. We have to demonstrate to the state of Connecticut that this is needed here. So we have data, we're preparing that, we have to convince the state of the need. But I wasn't clear that was the purview of this commission. So I could probably make some of this available through John. That would help.
I mean, Peter, if you want to read a portion of it, there's a highlight that we could.
I think it'd be better for me to provide some.
I mean, by the way, that's how we began this last month, is that we have to go through a very extensive process. I also read, and this was in your handout at tab 3, the certificate of need guidebook. Unless we can demonstrate a need, we don't get a license.
You were, the Massachusetts facility, the Haven facility, is more of an industrial area. I mean, it seems to be on a major, thoroughfare, and it's not downtown in a walkable community. So, I mean, that's like what it says. There could be other real estate in our community that might be a better match.
Right.
But it's not Mr. Orris's property, and, I understand, but this is, you guys are.
No matter where you go, someone's gonna say, find someplace else. This is a residential use in a zone that allows residential uses. In terms of need, here's what we have to do. No, I don't have to, this Peter has to do this. Whether there's a clear public need for the facility or service proposed, whether the applicant has satisfactory demonstrated that the proposal will improve quality, accessibility, and cost effectiveness of healthcare delivery in the region, whether the applicant has satisfactorily identified the population to be served, and that there's an unmet need for those services.
Excuse me, what do you need?
This is from my handout from the first night,
The certificate of need.
from the certificate of need, and whether the applicant has satisfactorily demonstrated the proposal will not result in unnecessary duplication of services or facilities in the area. Peter, who's been doing this for 50 years, says he's never seen a stronger case. So even if you were, let's say, we're trying to pull the wool over your eyes, there really is no need for this. Please just give us our rate change and go on our way. The state will never approve it. You have the safety net of people who are expert in this, just like, if you approve the application before us, the engineer said, we have to go to the Office of State Traffic Administration. They do, because you're going to that entity which really understands traffic. Well, same thing here. They have to go to the Department of Health. So you might get approved by local zoning for the 80,000 square foot building, but OSTA may say no, or you have to do these offside road improvements.
which has, obviously very high standards. Same thing here. And if you can't satisfy OSTA or their offsite road builders are too expensive, you don't have a project. Same thing here. If we can't demonstrate a true need, this will never happen.
Any other questions or comments? Any questions or comments from Zoom? Okay, hearing none, by statute, we have to vote tonight on the text amendment. So I will entertain a motion. Don't let it so blind.
We should talk about is it consistent with the P O C D.
That's standard, satisfies the plan.
Yeah. Letter.
So my letter, the memorandum from the firm that we could discuss.
Lori, could you repeat that? I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, you guys got to speak up a little.
I just said that we have the letter from Holman and Conley that we could go through again. I know Attorney Nuff already went through it, that they could discuss that and my letter that was received last month. You should have both there.
Thank you, Ed.
Lori, was your letter in this packet or
No.
last?
That is May 3.
We've just run through a few of the key points made in Lori's memo. Relative to consistency with the plan of conservation and development. First one, that while revising our downtown code along the Naugatuck Road, we should be increasing housing options that enhance the vibrancy, foster a mix of businesses along major roadways, and ensure diverse housing opportunities for residents of all. Second, POCD emphasizes the enhancement of services for residents and visitors while maintaining a visually appealing and distinctive identity of the downtown area. And finally, the other one, combination of the zoning map and POCD, the downtown area is designated as a business district. Relevant POCD highlights, if you will. Got a fairly active discussion. So again, we are required to vote tonight. 35 days expires at the end of this week. So I'll entertain a motion for the plan commission to send a I'll entertain a motion, noting that the planning commission send a positive referral to the zoning commission to amend the zoning, to amend the zoning regulations to add residential treatment facilities as defined in Attorney McCann's summary and add a parking state standard for such residential treatment facility. Is there a second? Yes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. That's nay. I think it's on.
Second.
No, you don't. Okay. More is yours.
I don't know what was Gary? I couldn't tell.
Gary was a nay.
Gary, you
Yes.
were,
Yes.
And can you just repeat what the motion was again?
The motion was to send a positive referral to the zoning commission to amend the Naugatuck zoning regulations to add residential treatment facilities. I'm not gonna read what that's defined here. And add a definition. And I'm sorry, and add a parking standard for residential treatment facilities.
Okay,
So that motion failed. The positive control failed 4-0.
wait,
That's not what I heard.
4-1, I didn't.
wait, so,
That's not what I heard.
did you vote for it or
I don't really think.
against?
Negative.
Oh, I thought you were for, so it was 1-0
Moving on. Old business, item B. Commission discussion decision regarding referral from the zoning commission for a special permit application for proposed residential treatment facilities to be located in Maple Street applicant Heritage downtown LLC. We are unable to vote on this. There is no zoning covered yet tonight. So I'll entertain a motion to deny without prejudice the application as submitted. No move. There a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh. Is there any other business to come before the commission?
next month's meeting.
Oh, next month's meeting, next month. Is the 4th of July, our meeting is the 1st of July. No objection, I'll entertain a motion to move that meeting until July 8th, is that something?
That is Monday.
A regularly scheduled meeting for July 8th. As we sit here, there's nothing on the agenda. Other than minutes.
Is it a special?
You're welcome.
It will be a special meeting. Wednesday, June 7th.
July 1st.
So you're within 30 days. So if you do, a meeting has to be a special. It has to be a special meeting.
We're good. Okay.
They're gonna move it. Yeah, that is what people do. So move. So moved. Second. I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, our meeting will move to July 8th.
And
And if there's nothing else, entertain a motion to adjourn.
raise
I
your
think it's
hand.
my turn this time on Zoom.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I move to adjourn.
Who was that?
Second. All in favor? Aye. Till next month.
Thank you.